Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with some more Total War Warhammer 3 news. Creative Assembly have just dropped a new blog and we had some early access, and this one is a rather exciting one as it's focused around all the new spell laws of Total War Warhammer 3. Yes, that also means it includes Nurgle and Slaanesh too, which I've been waiting for a long time. There is no news about a pre-order incentive spell law, so I'm assuming that that's going to come out whenever the pre-order incentive gets revealed. So let's not waste any more time and check out the spell laws and exactly what each of the spells do. There's a lot to discuss here. Okay, so first up we have the Lore of Tzeentch, and there's a few spells. I'm going to leave the screenshot for just a few seconds so you just can check out all the in-game stuff. And now let's jump into the spells themselves, with the first being Blue Fire of Tzeentch, a magic missile. With a twist of the hand, the spellcaster causes the bodies of their opponents to be consumed by courserating blue flames. This is a single target magic missile that applies the Warp Flame debuff, increasing fire damage received. Overcast version deals increased armor piercing damage. Not bad. Increasing fire damage is going to be quite useful considering that from as far we can see, the whole Tzeentch roster, or at least a grand majority of it, does fire damage. Next is the Pink Fire of Tzeentch, which is a breath spell, interestingly enough. A rolling tide of iridescent energy flows from the spellcaster, enveloping their enemies in a cone of searing magical flame. Conal damage spell inflicting the Warp Flame debuff. Oh, this does the debuff too. Overcast version deals bonus damage, that's kinda expected. Next we have Treason of Tzeentch, a hex and an area of effect. The spellcaster whispers into the enemy's minds, subtly stroking the fires of mistrust and treachery, lowers the leadership of all enemies affected in an area, and Overcast version also lowers melee attack. Ooh, interesting. That's going to be quite good versus Cornate forces. Next we have Glean Magic, Hex of the Winds. Reaching into his enemy's mind, the spellcaster steals their sorcery for his own diabolical use, increases your army's power recharge speed and reserves pool while decreasing the enemy's. Overcast version lasts longer. Right, okay, so we were all pretty much expecting this spell, and that's quite interesting. I kind of like the idea of it, though it might be the most overpowered. If you're dealing with many spellcaster armies, this is going to be really cool. Next we have Tzeentch's Firestorm. It's a vortex spell. Blistering balls of scarlet flame emanate from the spellcaster to engulf the foe in deadly balefire. 3 pillars of flames move randomly around the target area, dealing damage and applying warp flame. Overcast version deals increased armor piercing damage. Cool. So is this going to be a big area and it's just going to move around? Though that still looks like it's going to be quite powerful too. And if you like vortex spells, then you're going to like this next one because Tzeentch has 2. Infernal Gateway, another vortex. A portal to the realms of chaos opens, a magical tear in the mortal plane that sucks those nearby inside to face certain madness, if not their doom. Massive stationary area damage. Overcast version deals increased armor piercing damage. This is going to be quite good if, say for example, you get your enemies in a choke point, and I think that's how most people are going to use it. Tzeentch has a pretty interesting lore of magic. It looks like it's going to be really fun to use, but I must admit that I wanted to move on quite quickly as we do have, well, what I imagine to be the most important lore of magic for this game, at least in my understanding. This is of course the Lore of Slaanesh, and, well, we got a little screenshot which I think that's an LORES or possibly a Herald of Slaanesh, but it's not very clear. As expected, there's a number of spells, with the first being the Lash of Slaanesh. It's a breath weapon. The exquisite kiss of the Dark Prince's three-tailed whip strikes the enemy with a delicious fury. Conal damage spell that sends enemies flying. Awesome. Overcast version deals increased armor piercing damage. Yeah, that's going to be kind of fun. A lot of armor piercing, I'm imagining, and I can see here, because that's actually a really important thing in Slaanesh's roster. We'll discuss that when we eventually go into lore for Slaanesh. The next spell is Acquiescence, which is a hex spell. The spellcaster's corrupting touch puts their victims into a blissful, euphoric state for a short time, rendering them little able to move, let alone defend themselves, decreases speed and melee defense of a target unit. Overcast version has a large area of effect on speed. This is going to be really good because while we haven't seen the Slaaneshi roster just yet, we pretty much can tell by the miniatures that were available that you're going to be using a lot of speed, and obviously you're going to be able to want to charge into enemies a lot, as you're going to have a lot of chariots, so this is going to be a very good spell. Disappointed that it's not an area of effect, but hey, maybe that changes in the future. Keep in mind that this is still very early. Next, we have Hysterical Frenzy. It's an augment. The caster's victims are engulfed by a torrent of unreasoning emotion, excruciating pain, and blissful rapture, causing them to embark on a riotous, clawing rampage. Buffs the armor-piercing weapon damage and melee attack of a target unit, as well as giving them the rampage attribute. Overcast version further increases armor-piercing weapon damage. That's all good, not too keen on Rampage, but I guess they wanted to balance that a little bit more. I'll make a mod and just remove that. Purveying of Slaanesh, direct damage. Whistling one of Slaanesh's perverse Darkling dancers causes the foe's bones to jerk spasmodically until they break. Deals damage over time and reduces the melee attack of a target. Overcast version increases duration and thus damage. Yeah, this is going to be cool. I like that. It's too bad that spells don't have a visual thing, because it would be kind of nice to see like a bunch of greatswords dancing around in pain. Next we have Slicing Shards, Bombardment. A mirror forms in the sky, only to be shattered into a myriad of deadly shards that lacerate the enemy below. Bombards an area with damage from deadly exploding glass shards. Overcast version deals increased damage. This is going to be kind of fun. I like bombardments, especially if you can scrunch up your enemy. It really depends on how much you can do that though. And lastly, Phantasmagoria, a Hex Area of Effects spell. A complex sigil is performed, transfixing the enemy with a shifting array of hallucinatory images that disjoint and befuddle, inviting their deaths. Reduces the leadership and prevents movement of all units in an area. Overcast version lasts longer. This sounds freaking cool. I like that. I really like this spell. Keep in mind that they're doing their best to translate all the stuff from the tabletop into this, and this sounds really good. This was our first taste of Slaanesh, and unfortunately we're going to have to wait a while until we see some more, but we do have another new lore of magic, which is the Lore of Nurgle. Now, of course, we're going to look at the screenshot for a little bit, which I'm assuming that's the Herald. He looks like he's a big chunky boy, so hey, Nurgle. But let's jump into the actual spell lore now, with the first being Miasma of Pestilence, a hex spell. The most putrescent vapor fills the air, loosening lunches and bowels and causing violent, crippling vomiting seizures in nearby foes. Target unit has reduced melee attack and charge bonus. Overcast version changes this to all units in a target area. God, that sounds really fun, especially since Nurgle's going to be able to hit hard but move slow, so you're going to be taking damage getting there. This is going to do you quite well just to weaken your enemy's forces. The next spell is Stream of Corruption, a breath spell. A poisonous spurt of diseased gas and bile spews forth from the caster's diseased lungs, drenching the enemies in vile, choking pus. Spoiler alert if you guys haven't eaten yet, yeah, I'm sorry. Long Fin Cone attack that leaves a trail of damaging poison and applies poison to all enemies hit. Okay, cool. Overcast version deals more damage. Yeah, this is pretty interesting, so it applies poison. I'm imagining that we're going to have a lot of stuff applying poison, so this kind of makes sense. Next, let's move on to Curse of the Leper, an augment. As the caster speaks, his followers are blessed with resilience, whilst his enemies watch in horror as their limbs wither and drop off. That sounds awesome. Adds armor and damage reflection to a unit. Overcast version increases both values. Damage reflection, cool. Next we have Rancid Visitations, direct damage. The enemy is gifted the Plague Lord's nightmarish necrosis, causing their skin to blacken and their eternal organs to mulch. Pours filth over an enemy, dealing damage all the while. Overcast version lasts longer. Is it me or just Nurgle's ones just sounds so fun? Next we have Blight Boil, an explosion spell. This filthy, pulsating blister rapidly grows before suddenly bursting, showering the enemy with its disgusting fluid and all the maladies contained within. Creates a massive explosion at target area after a short delay. Overcast version deals more damage. Sounds really fun, to be honest. And lastly, Fleshly Abundance, Regeneration, which is interesting that the last spell is a regeneration spell. The most repulsive growth spurt imaginable occurs, the wobbling mounds of fat sealing wounds as they are formed, greatly replenishes the hit points of target unit. Overcast version changes to units within target area. Okay, so this might be a really strong healing spell, which, yeah, kind of makes sense for Nurgle. This is going to be quite interesting. Hopefully that means that healing will be a bit more viable. I mean for Nurgle over anything else, because a lot of units do have like a decent health regeneration pool, but I feel like Nurgle might need a bigger one. Now we're going to move on to the Cathayan lores, which we first have the Lore of Yin. For those who are not aware, the Cathayans have access to 2 laws of magic, so let's go check out the spells. First we have Storm of Shadows, it's a hex spell. Ghostly shadows spring from the caster's outstretched arms, enveloping the foe in dancing shades that make their footing uncertain and their visions confounded by the gloom. Greatly reduces the speed of a target unit. Overcast version changes to units within a target area. Okay, fair enough, you're going to need that type of stuff, especially if you're going to have a lot of demons throwing at you, so yeah. Next we have Cloak of Jet, it's a hiding spell. The shadowy barrier of dark yin energy turns aside enemy sorceries, protecting those within its midnight embrace from the elemental winds. Target unit gains snipe, stalk, and unspottable traits. Overcast version increases the duration. Okay, don't know exactly how well this might translate, but then again I don't really use a lot of sneaky type of units, I like to throw my forces straight in, so it might be quite useful for you guys, let me know what you think. Next we have Blossom Wind. A wind of leaves and blossoms rolls across the battlefield, cutting into the enemy with supernatural power and blinding them with its fury. Column damage spell that also inflicts blinded. Okay. Overcast version deals additional armor-piercing damage. This should be pretty interesting. I don't recall blinded before, I'm guessing this is new, unless I just don't pay attention to debuffs. But this should be very interesting. Next, we have Missile Mirror. This is another hex spell. I believe there's a missing word here, but hey, I'm not too sure. A magical of shifting darkness and howling wind snatches the enemy's missiles from the air, even as they are fired, and hurls them back to its owners. Target's unit's projectiles are reflected back on it for a duration. Overcast version lasts longer and has a larger cast range, I'm assuming that means has, keeping your wizard safe from harm. Curious, so you put this on a specific unit and that stops them from firing. Well, they can still fire, but it's going to be back at them. This is going to be a really fun spell to use. Imagine doing that on Sisters of Avalon. Next we have Talons of Night, which is a vortex spell. An icy wind rolls out across the battlefield, filling those who enter its coiling gloom with panic and fear. Large persistent damage vortex spell, an overcasted version deals more damage. There's not much to explain there, so we'll move on to something really interesting. Ancestral Warriors Summon Unit. The warrior's ancestors are summoned from the underworld, rising up to strike at the enemy with a furious assault before vanishing into the earth once more. Summons a unit of ancestral warriors to fight for you. Ancestral warriors are a strong halberd infantry unit that will degrade over time. Overcast version has a longer cast range. This is pretty cool because we've not seen a ancestral unit before, so I'm assuming that this is just going to be one of the halberd units just with a ghostly tint, or at least I hope so, because yeah, it'll look kind of cool. That being said, that the Lore of Yin does sound really interesting, and I can't wait to actually play with this. It does sound like it might be one of these fun lores, especially with Missile Mirror. That sounds really cool. Of course, where there's yin, there's also yang, and this one looks very colourful, so let's just jump right in. First we have Jade Shield, a ward save spell. A blazing wind of light creates a potent barrier against harm, as well as invigorating all living things who shelter beneath its protection. Gives a unit significant damage resistance, overcast version increases duration. Simple enough, not much needs to be explained, so let's move on to Dragon's Breath, which, hey, you guessed it, is a breath spell. If the enemy sees the dragon in a single glance, its fiery breath will burn them to cinders. Conal damage spell, applying a field of fire to burn enemies. Overcast version deals increased damage. Again, doesn't really need too much explaining, so let's move on to Wall of Wind and Fire, which is a wind spell. A vortex of fire and wind distorts everything seen through it, and sows disorder and confusion among the enemy, leaving them vulnerable. Wide, slow-moving Wall of Fire damage spell. Overcast version adds armor-piercing damage. Ooh, it says slow moving, but very wide. I'm curious to see how slow this very much is, and obviously how wide it is too, but if it's too slow, maybe enemies will move out of the way? I don't know. Next we have Stone Ground Stance, an augment area of effect spell. The Yan of all loyal Cathayans present comes to the fore, making even the humblest foot soldiers resolute and ready to fight and die where they stand. All units in an area receive extra mass, leadership, and expert charge defense trait. Overcast version affects a wider area. Oh, okay, this is a spell that increases mass. I don't think any of them have been like this before, so this is going to be really interesting. Obviously very useful when you're dealing with a Skull Crusher charge, so yeah, I'm all for this. Next we have Might of Heaven and Earth, an augment. Soldiers present are filled with the pure power of the Yan, which makes them stronger and more skilled, and their weapons blaze with celestial energy. Imbues a unit with flaming, magical attacks, and increases their melee attack, base damage, and armor-piercing damage. Overcast version further increases these stats. Okay, this is going to be really useful if you've got one of those high-tier infantry just holding down a bunch of enemy. Yeah, that's going to be quite cool. And lastly, we have Constellation of the Dragon, an explosion spell. Blazing starlight leaps from the wizard's fingertips, dancing and forming the constellation of the Dragon Emperor before descending upon the foe and exploding among their ranks. A great explosion that deals large damage in a big area. Overcast version deals more armor-piercing damage. Yeah, sounds pretty good, sounds pretty powerful. I hope that the animation is really impressive because this makes it sound like it's going to be. But now we can move on to the two Kislevites lores, the first one being the Lore of Ice. We've already been able to showcase this in-game as creators such as myself were able to do that survival battle and we had access to this spell lore specifically. The first spell is known as Ice Sheet, which is a hex area of effect. Such is the volume of snowfall that Kislev's enemies must wade through that the air itself becomes a near opaque wall of ice no gaze can penetrate. All enemy units that enter an area have reduced speed and charge speed, no overcast version. Shame no overcast, but then again reduced speed and charge speed, that's going to be very useful against Slaanesh. Next we have Ice Maiden's Kiss, a breath spell. The numbing kiss of winter is enough to have hoarfrost crystallize on the skin, chilling any creature to the bone. Short, wide conal attack that deals damage and applies the frostbite debuff. Overcast version deals increased damage. Okay, that's pretty useful and sounds all good. Let's move on to Frostblades, which is an augment spell. Crackling magical energy envelops the unit's weapons, imbuing them with deadly new properties. Those impaled on these murderous blades will die in frozen agony, imbues a unit with magical attacks and increased weapon damage, armor-piercing damage, and melee attack. Overcast version increases all these values. Fair, that sounds pretty good, and well, we know that Kislev is going to have a lot of units which are both range and melee, so this spell is going to be useful for practically every unit. But let's move on now to Deathfrost, which is a direct damage spell. Warriors shiver and shake in a wintry grasp until the piercing cold reaches their hearts, and finally they move no more. Deals direct damage over time to a unit. Overcast version deals greater damage. These spell descriptions are sounding really nice. Next is Crystal Sanctuary, which is another augment spell. Constructs are woven from the ice itself, sheltering Kislev's courageous soldiers from the onslaught of their foes. Target unit cannot move but has a massive increase to damage resistance. Overcast version changes this to all units in a target area. That's going to be very good in a choke point. This sounds really fun. And lastly, Heart of Winter, direct damage area. At one with the frozen plains and snowy tundra of Kislev, wherever this one goes, they bring the icy heart of the motherland with them, deals damage in an area and slows enemies, both values increasing over time as the storm gathers strength. Overcast version increases all values at all stages. This spell was extremely overpowered when it came to the survival battle, but then again it was dumbed down for the press release people, I believe, because the battle was very easy overall, but hopefully it's been balanced, though it does sound like it's going to be really fun. Plus, slowing down enemies, dealing loads of damage and so on. This is going to be cool. As long as it's powerful, but just not broken powerful, I'm all for it. And lastly, we have the lore of Tempest, which I've been really curious about because we've known about this lore for a long time now, like day one of the showcases. The devs mentioned it way back in the survival battle interview and then they stayed quiet, so hey, let's go check it out. The first spell is Gust of True Flight, an augment. Projectiles of all kinds can be fired faster and further as if guided by a sentient essence deep within. Target unit gets bonus range and accuracy. Overcast version changes this to all units in an area. This is going to be very helpful for Kislev as they do have a decent amount of range. Next we have Hailstorm, a bombardment. A deluge of lacerating, fist-sized shards of ice falls from the sky, battering the foe into submission. A medium area is bombarded with explosive projectiles. Overcast version lasts longer and has more projectiles. Okay, yeah, makes sense. I wonder what they classify as a medium area though. Let's move on to Swiftwing, Augment/Area. The spellcaster and their allies become a blur of cyan energy which darts through the air at incredible speed before coalescing back into their natural form. All units in an area gain speed and significant charge bonus increase. Yeah, sounds cool. Overcast version has an increased area of effect. Okay, so small area, large area? Thing is, we don't actually know if this is going to be the same area sizes that we've seen in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, or if they're changing for Warhammer 3. Next we have Biting Wind, which, you guessed it, is a wind spell. The winds of magic are gathered into a mighty freezing gale that slashes at the enemy with icy shards. Long column damage spell. Overcast version deals more damage and more armor-piercing damage. Again, very easy to explain, so let's move on, with the next spell being Hawks of Miska, Vortex. The spellcaster summons frozen spirits of fear, hatred and dread that loose fearful cries tormenting all others who bear witness. Randomly moving vortex that deals damage and applies discourage to enemies. Overcast version deals increased damage. Okay, sounds pretty cool. Shame that it's a randomly moving vortex. It would be kind of cool if you could actually just point where it will go. Kind of like how vortexes were at the beginning of the tabletop, where at the start when you casted them you could choose where they go and then they'd be random. And lastly, Blizzard, which is, you guessed it, a vortex spell. Snow and ice rise from the land, freezing and blinding any and all in their path with an unnatural cold. Large, damaging vortex that also applies frostbite. Overcast version deals extra damage. Okay, sounds cool. I want to see how this spell lore does in comparison to the lore of Ice. I do believe that a developer once said that the idea for the Kislev magic was that you wanted to have both, so two spellcasters in an army that could support each other, though I don't know if that's changed plans or something. Maybe in a similar way to why you would want armies with a lore of Yin and a lore of Yang caster, though we're going to have to wait and see. Now, with all that being said, you can see at the very bottom too that they kind of hinted at the pre-order incentive again. Once again with the whole hungry thing, so yeah, like they can just say it's ogres really. Like many of us are waiting for a proper trailer, but they've hinted ogres so much at this point that if they decide to shock us with Chaos Dwarves, yeah, like I'll eat my hat. Though with all that being said, the spell laws sound really fun, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to interpret the gut magic for the Ogre Kingdoms. So yeah, this is going to be really cool. I'm really excited. The Slaanesh one made my day. I was worried that we were going to see the pre-order incentive have like a few weeks of that and not like, you know, Slaanesh for a while. Though I'm imagining that we're going to have to wait until after the Ogres or something. I don't know. They've been hinting the Ogres so much that at this point it must be coming soon. But what do you guys think about the spell lores? Which one are you most excited about? I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of people going for Tzeentch, but hey, maybe there's some other Chaos followers. Or maybe you're more interested in the Kislevite ones or the Cathayan ones. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm curious to see what you guys think because obviously these are new spell lores of magic. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.